Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Herding Squirrels, a podcast about modern teams. Today's guest is Barninder Khurana. He's a technology leader who helps insurance organizations move faster, work smarter, and grow profitably. He's currently the CTO of CoverWhale and has worked for the last decade plus across MGA and carrier space in various leadership roles, including being the CIO of GeoVera and leading digital transformation at ProSite. Barninder, welcome. We're excited to have you here today.
Excited to be here.
So, for your first build, Barninder, what I want you to do is build a model that tells a story about who you are outside of work.
Okay, so outside of work, these three colors right there, those represent my kids. That's first and foremost, I'm a dad. I have three boys, and they are, they're part and parcel of who I am, and I wouldn't be who I am without them. Then I've got, my wife and my partnership with my wife, how I have my relationship with her, and then of course I've got my dog, and I kind of as a joke put it right next to my wife because my wife doesn't like my dog, so there's always this like get him out of the kitchen or get him out of here. So I'm gonna make him sit next to her in this Lego because that's probably the only place he will sit next to her.
Yes.
Over here in the back is really just sort of my mindset, which is always about growth and learning, and that really isn't just about work. It's anything and everything. If it comes to my younger one has ADHD, so instead of just kind of saying, okay, he has ADHD, my wife and I both just kind of went off and learned a lot. We read books, we consulted with doctors and other parents who have these challenges. Before we were having kids, we actually went out and interviewed other couples who we used as our sort of our model to say, if our kids turn out like them, that would be a win. And so we asked them, what did you do differently? Why your kids turned out the way they did versus some others? And kind of build some, let's call it mental models in our mind, to see how it defines or how we wanted to live our life together. And so for me, growth is everything. I look for growth. I push for growth. I am always reading. I'm learning. I'm evolving as a person, as a professional, as a parent, as a husband. And this that saying of the person you married is not the person you end up with, is very, very, very true for me. Probably more than my wife had ever imagined. Hopefully in a good way. So that's kind of who I am. I wrote a list of things I wanted to accomplish in my life when I was 21. I still am following that list, if you will, checking things off as I go. And that's sort of that ladder here that represents, all the things that I wanted to do in my life, that, so far, and thankfully I've been able to say, yep, I have done this, but I'm working towards that. For me, the flag here actually just represents, wind in my hair, freedom. I'm a biker, so I, almost throughout the year, I'm out on my motorcycle. If it's, unless there's snow or ice on the ground, I'm out with my buddies, and so we, so this to me is sort of represents that aspect of who I am.
For your next build, I would love for you to think of what is the best team experience you've ever been a part of, and build a model that shows why you think that experience was so good.
This is that way I would see it, right? You go from one goal to another goal, and you're always trying to achieve the next big thing. And so that represents me, I guess, in the middle. Leading the team, but also being part of the action. There's people who already understand what we're trying to do on the team. And so empowering them to get ahead, empowering them to come up with ideas. That's sort of represented by these two white pieces over here. And sort of saying, okay, let's go ahead and start conquering things, sort of enabling, empowering the team, I think is the key. And then also understanding that there might be some who are, lagging behind. How do you bring them along? How do you tap into what motivates them? Um, that's usually the answer people get to is, well, we'll just replace people. I'm sure that can be an answer, uh, but not until you've actually tried to motivate people. You've tried to bring them along. You've tried to uh, encourage them to sign up for the mission. And the most successful teams that I've built have had that one common element where everybody rows in the same direction and everybody is moving in the same direction. They might have different ideas and opinions. They might want to do things differently, but we're all marching towards the same goal. And once you have that unity in thought, you can align the execution. The execution comes after you have the unity in thought. And once you understand there's a larger goal at play, people who aren't usually willing to compromise will start to give you suggestions on how to get around a problem, how to solve a problem. And so to build a high efficiency team, to build a team that's going to achieve great things, you actually have to sometimes lead from the front, sometimes lead from behind, sometimes get out of their way. And you as a leader have to know which party, which person requires what, and you have to act accordingly. So you really need to be in the center of the action. You need to know who your team members are. You need to know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and you need to march everybody towards the same goal. That's kind of what this represents.
Does the ladder itself have any specific meaning?
Well, the latter, that's a good observation. The latter is an escape route, right? So there are always going to be people who won't fit the cycle, who won't fit what you're trying to accomplish or the way you're trying to accomplish it. And even when you're trying to um, bring them along and sell them on the idea or sell them on the vision, um, they just, we all carry emotional baggage. We all carry our sort of career baggage, and we act based on what we know, and what our experiences have been. So if our experience has been, anytime we start something new, it always falls apart, so I must hold my ground. Um, Sometimes those people come around, and sometimes they don't. I always try to give everyone a soft landing. So if it's hey, this isn't going to work out, you work with them to explain to them why this isn't going to work out, and if you can, be a reference for them. And then also the latter represents adding new talent. You do need to add new talent sometimes, either to expand the team or to fill a hole. And more than just the technical skills, what I also look for, because that's a baseline. Anybody who, if I'm hiring a developer, if they don't know how to code, that's a non-starter to begin with. But that's not enough. You actually have to find people who have the grit. And to me, finding people who have grit is by far the most important aspect outside of their basic foundational skills. One little quick story. I was working for RVM, and I needed to, and they brought me on to actually understand some of the challenges with the teams. The team had a 33% turnover every 6 months. The morale was very low. I didn't know anything about e-discovery. I didn't know anything about e-discovery, but they brought me on because the challenges were people related and culture related. So while I was learning how to manage operations of an e-discovery company, Um, that really turned out to be the key problem, the foundational problem. So one of my conclusions was everybody's being called over the weekend or for overnight shifts to do work while they're on their way home in many cases. And that's just not fair to them or their families. And from a company's expense standpoint, we'll pay 1.5 to 2 times for these folks to work. And that also impacts the morale and the turnover. So why not start a third shift? But nobody wanted to do a third shift. So I put the job description out. One person who was working at Jacob Javits Center as a window washer applied. And so I called him. I said, look, you don't have the technical skills that are necessary for this job, but I'm just curious, like why did you apply? And when I was actually meeting with him in person, he said, give me 3 months. I will be the hardest working person on your team. I said, okay, done. I'm going to take a chance. I will provide support system around you. I will help. My team will help you learn. If in 3 months you're able to start the third shift, you've got yourself a deal. And he did. He worked really, really hard. He became manager of the third shift, and he's gone off to have a very successful career in that space. So, very happy for him. And to me, grit by far outweighs any other trait that I can bring on in a team.
How would you define grit?
Grit to me is knowing that there's a challenge or a set of challenges, working through trying to solve it with calmness, patience, and focus, and not giving up until the problem is actually solved.
Do you think grit is teachable? Is it inherent? How do you think grit shows up in individuals? And do you think people are grittier now?
um, I think grit partly comes from motivation. So if you're not motivated to do what you're there to do, even if you have that in you, you won't activate it for that job, whatever that job happens to be. So people apply that grit, that desire to push in different things in their life. So I don't know if grit is something that people just don't have. I think people just don't apply it because they're not motivated enough to do what it is that they're there to do. And you can deal with that in a couple of ways. You can either try to motivate them, try to get them on board with what you're trying to accomplish, the bigger picture, if you will, which is also another element that's usually missing when you're talking about jobs and corporations. A lot of times it's this is my job, and your manager tells you that's your job, that's what you do, don't worry about anything else. And so they have no idea where the company's going, where the department is going, where the project is going. They just know that they need to do this one thing, which when you kind of zoom out and you sell them on the idea that no, there's a bigger play, bigger picture at play here, bigger goals that we're going to accomplish, and here's how it's going to benefit your career, your well-being, company's future, and your contribution to that company's future, and what a great story you will have to tell when we do this. A lot of times what I've seen is people sort of light up, and when you see that, that's the spark that you're looking for. And then every few whatever time frame, you have to remind people, because then you get down to the nitty gritty and kind of lose sight of what you're really there to accomplish, and you have to pull people out. So this is our goal. This is what we're after. This is what we're trying to accomplish, and it reactivates that grit and reactivates that drive that they have. Now, the flip side of that is once it is there, as long as it stays, you're good. Once it extinguishes, it is very, at least this has been my experience, and I'm no psychologist here, but what I have experienced is it is extinguished, it's very difficult to reignite it. It's very difficult for people to get remotivated about something. And so that's where you kind of have to, make certain decisions and see if there's a path forward.
It makes me think of dumping water on a fire. Like once you do it, it's going to be pretty hard to reignite that fire again. At least for some time. It's gotta dry out a little. Oh.
Yep, that's exactly
right. Barninder, this is so great. I want to jump into the next build, and for our next build, actually I want to shift into kind of the change space. Right, we've all been through a lot lately. Going back 5 years ago, we started with COVID. That has introduced a lot of remote work and hybrid work. Now companies are figuring out how to utilize AI, and that is a whole new challenge. Build a model that shows what leading through uncertainty actually looks like, the kind of the real experience of navigating your team through changes when the playbook hasn't been written yet.
Okay, so the uncertainty in anything requires a steady hand. That's the first thing. And even though the goal isn't exactly always visible, you still need to move forward. You still need to march forward. And going through COVID, going through an almost seemingly unsurmountable amount of changes, even during COVID, when people were uncertain about jobs and what will happen, and people being hired, being fully remote, now being transitioned into partly in office, which has been a significant change, especially for those who are coming out of college and had remote jobs, and now are being asked to come into the office now with advent of AI. And AI has been around for a while, but most people haven't used AI until Gen AI came around. That has been transformational for people, but the potential of AI in this scenario has been AI is the dumbest today it will ever be, right? So we talk about Gen AI, Gentic AI. How do we use it? It is only going to get faster. It is only going to get smarter, but it also is going to get commoditized. So all of these obstacles and seemingly unsurmountable obstacles very quickly are going to become commoditized. And those walls will start coming down because solutions will start appearing. And the future, at least in my mind, the future of AI is not necessarily building this really cool thing that you're going to invent. Sure, that is the current phase, current time frame where problems that have never been solved can now be solved. But from a large scale standpoint, the answer is composition of solutions. There's different solutions out there for different things. They solve very specific things, but very specific problems. And not every problem is the same for every company. So how do you put different pieces together, just like the Legos here, to actually solve the one specific problem that you have? Either it's operational efficiency because you're doing a lot of things manually, or it is you have an expense overhead because your call center is too big, or you want to improve the efficiency of your employees because they're right now, for example, they're reading all the contracts manually or one page at a time, and they can feed it into an AI model and get a summary of that, or the AI model can tell you the gaps in it, although OpenAI just said that they're not going to do that. So now that creates an opportunity, and that's what kind of this ladder here represents. Those are all opportunities for you to now build specific models to solve that one specific problem. You had one generic solution, ChatGPT, Claude, what have you, and it did everything for everyone, but it didn't do anything with the level of precision that is needed for it to be trusted. So now the next advent is, how do you build a solution to solve one specific set of problems, and it is specialized in that set of problems so you can get to your ultimate goal. So ChatGPT models for legal teams, ChatGPT models for doctors who want to input symptoms and have the diagnosis of what is going on. That is where that's sort of the next most immediate opportunity. And then from there, you get into, now AI is commoditized. How do you compose a solution to solve the problems that you have? So leading a team through uncertainty, you have to have a steady hand. You have to know, you can't get distracted. A lot of companies and people and leaders get distracted with the shiny ball, you know, and they, maybe I can even add a little piece here. It broke the model. But anyway, the, the shiny thing, and they want to play with the technology, or they want to play with this or play with that. And they lose sight of the fact that everything costs the company money. So how do you accomplish what you need to accomplish? What is the actual problem that you're trying to solve? And if you keep people focused on the problem, you build a culture of innovation right in the DNA of the company, the solutions will come. If you hire, and I might say something very controversial right now, but if you say, hey, this is the AI team, well, the AI team needs data. So that data team has now a different mandate than the AI team. And what's happening is AI teams building their own data stores, which is now going to be not in sync with the core data of the company. So how do you solve that? You actually build the ability to solve problems as part of the DNA of the company. It's part of the DNA of your team. And these are the people who already know the company, they know the culture, they know the technology. So if there's a couple of things that they don't know, very easy to upskill them. It's actually more cost efficient to upskill them than to go hire somebody to do one specific job when they don't have access to the rest of the company and the rest of the organization. So this is, typical evolution of anything. Back when digital transformation was a thing, companies were hiring chief digital transformation officer. They were hiring whole teams for digital transformation. And then they would go in and say, we want to change all these things. And everybody else would say, no, I have my job to do. That's your job. I'm not doing your job. Well, I can't transform a company until you, the people in the company, actually transform. And so that's the dichotomy, that's the push-pull, that's the conflict. And if you look at your team and you have really good people, you upskill them to bring them on par with where the industry is going, where the technology is going. You have now not only added value to their own professional existence and added life to their professional existence, which they will be forever grateful for. You've also enabled them to solve problems that they already know exist, and now they have the tools to solve them.
Fantastic. Barninder, I think we're out of time, but I'd love to ask, what was it like building your thoughts and ideas out of Lego bricks?
I have not done this ever before, so this was interesting. Kind of putting your thoughts into bricks and trying to figure out visual representation of what the idea was. I didn't think it would be that hard, but it was harder than I thought. It was harder than I thought.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you found it at least unique and in something a little
This is
different,
fun.
right?
This is great.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is so much fun.
If our listeners want to find more of you, of your thoughts, your ideas out there, where can they get more Barninder?
I'm on LinkedIn, so feel free to find me there. Follow. I post every once in a while, less frequently than I want to, just because of time availability. But I try to post there.
Fantastic. We'll make sure to include that information in our show notes. Otherwise, this has been fantastic, Barninder. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Brandon.
All right. And thanks everyone for listening. Again, this is Herding Squirrels, your podcast for teams where we uncover the nuts and bolts of teamwork.